So, previously I introduced the story of a Chinese cargo ship that cut 2 underwater cables in the Baltic Sea. After that, it was surrounded by NATO naval forces and detained. There's a follow-up to this story that I'd like to share with everyone. First of all, regarding this incident, right after the cables were cut, it was identified that a Chinese ship was responsible. Immediately, naval forces from neighboring countries moved in and surrounded the ship to prevent its escape. In other words, the involved countries responded quite swiftly. There's some information available about the background to this rapid response, so I'd like to share that first. Take a look at this. The title of this article mentions that preparations had been made this time. This indicates that the incident wasn't just something that authorities reacted to after the cables were cut. Instead, it occurred amidst heightened vigilance by neighboring countries, who had already anticipated the possibility of such an event. Why were these countries so wary of such incidents? It goes back to October 2023, when a Chinese ship, apparently from Hong Kong, caused a similar incident. This ship, named New Polar Bear, destroyed underwater cables and a gas pipeline in the Baltic Sea. The gas pipeline in question, according to other articles, connected Finland and Estonia. Now, let's look at the map. Here is Finland, and here is Estonia. I've actually been to both Helsinki, Finland, and Tallinn, Estonia. There's a ferry that travels from Finland to Tallinn, and it's a short trip. This sea area is quite narrow and not very far apart, but the seabed here contains a lot of cables and pipelines. In October last year, Chinese ships destroyed this critical infrastructure. Neighboring countries, aware that something similar might happen again, had prepared to respond immediately. This is the context behind why this incident unfolded the way it did, with neighboring navies surrounding the Chinese ship in question. As a brief aside, Finland and Estonia are very close to Russia. When I visited Finland, I thought of it as the land of saunas. I tried one myself, and there were many Russians there, though I'm not sure whether they were there for work or tourism. Countries in this region have deep ties to Russia. Many Russians also work abroad in European countries, likely as part of labor migration. Returning to the main topic, the Chinese ship cut the underwater cables on November 17 and 18. By November 19, it had entered the Kattegat Strait, where it was detained by the surrounding naval forces. For reference, the Kattegat Strait is around this area marked by the large red arrow. The ship was detained until recently, surrounded by vessels from Denmark, Germany, and Sweden. At this point, I should note that despite clear evidence that the Chinese ship had cut the cables, international law prevented neighboring countries from boarding the ship to investigate. Only Chinese authorities had the legal right to board and inspect the ship. This situation led to a standoff. Finally, on December 20, China conducted an investigation, but this occurred after diplomatic negotiations involving China and neighboring countries like Sweden, Germany, Finland, and Denmark. These neighboring countries participated as observers, merely verifying whether China was conducting a proper investigation, without any authority to conduct their own inquiries. The next day, the Chinese ship was released and allowed to proceed to its destination, after being detained for about a month. So, the ship left the Kattegat Strait in December and is now headed for Egypt. It originally departed from a Russian port, which indicates that Russia and Egypt maintain significant trade routes involving large cargo ships. Although Russia is under sanctions and unable to trade in U.S. dollars, this incident shows that large-scale trade continues, suggesting the existence of alternative payment methods. To wrap up, the affected countries in this incident were unable to detain or investigate the Chinese ship or its crew due to international law. Current international laws seem outdated, as they don't account for ships deliberately targeting underwater infrastructure. These laws essentially leave such investigations to the ship's home country, in this case, China. Given that similar incidents occurred last year and this year, it's clear that international law needs to be revised. Countries with underwater infrastructure, such as Japan, can no longer consider this someone else's problem. Steps must be taken to create systems allowing affected nations to detain ships, investigate crews, and impose penalties. This is still an ongoing issue, as we await the results of the Chinese investigation. Once more information is available, I'll share it with everyone. That's all for today's video. See you next time.